coming today, and we hope to answer any questions that you have at the end. In terms of the format, we're just basically going to repeat our main allegations, and obviously we'll preface this. We're basing that on witness testimony and something that we haven't been able to prove yet. In terms of the stuff that we're watertight about, we'll be absolutely categorical about that. To start off, we have witness testimony that there was mismanagement at an agency that was under the agency called the Intermediate Labour Project, and we have an eyewitness who says he saw the head of employability services at Glasgow East Regeneration Agency abuse the ILM, which was funded by European money, basically to give out jobs and also to help a firm which our witness says was linked to some Labour councillors bid for construction contracts on a cheaper basis than they'd been able to otherwise. The Intermediate Labour Project was a scheme for people exiting prison, coming out of long periods of homelessness and getting back into the workplace. The idea was an employability service funded by Europe. The second allegation that we can make about the same individual as Gary Hay, it's also based on witness testimony, but basically that a complaint has been made to Audit Scotland about this individual, and the complaint alleges that board members on a charity that this man Hay ran were not real individuals. Basically there were fraudulent payments made, and based on our own investigations into that charity Diversity, we have uncovered that relatives of Councillor George Redmond, who also features in this report, Councillor Frank McAveety, who used to be an MSP and leader of the council, and Councillor Yvonne Kuchik are all on the board of this charity. So that's our own investigations. In terms of the same individuals, we've got Councillor Redmond, Councillor Yvonne Kuchik and Councillor Frank McAveety and Ronnie Size coming up again in a range of commercial relationships. Now, we understand that when the payment that was made to Ronnie Size that Oscar, the charities regulator, condemned as misconduct, the council's response were that the two councillors, Councillor Jim Coleman and Councillor George Redmond, were inexperienced in running boards. What we've uncovered is that these individuals have business relationships that predate the GERA folding up, which led to the Ronnie Size payout. So that they predate that, and they post-date between some of the key players there who made the payout. The fourth allegation we make is definitely not criminal, but we think it is misconduct. Basically, this has been in the public domain, but despite unfavourable impressions, which include the perception that David Crawford acted inappropriately, this is the former head of social work at the City Council. Despite unfavourable impressions during the closure of the Accord Centre and also subsequent closures of daycare centres, David Crawford was given a very generous £600,000 severance package, and this at a time when the social work department is making very stringent cuts. We think that's totally inappropriate. So not illegal, but definitely wrong. And this, I think, our next allegation is a central allegation, and we believe this is a watertight case of malfeasance and very possibly criminal. The council department boss, Robert Booth, who ran land and environmental services until recently, was involved in insider trading with his brother, who is a senior executive at Viridor, over the combined heat and power plant at Polmadie, which is now a private incinerator run by Viridor. Freedom of information requests into the deal have been rebuffed, so it's all very opaque. But what is clear is that someone who runs a department for the council, who has led a project to develop a centre for combined heat and power, should not then sell that same council asset to a private company to do something completely different, basically run an incinerator. So that I think is clear-cut malfeasance. And I pass you on to my colleague Andy.
Okay, the next allegation we have relates to the Freedom of Information Act response, which the campaign sought for. This time it was in reference to the city's problem of homelessness. Now the council has a statutory duty to house, or the council systematically has told homeless people that has a statutory duty to house, but there is no accommodation available. Our Freedom of Information response from the council showed that this occurred 23.8% of the time. And so that's something that is a clear breach of Scottish Government rules. So I think that again, allegation of malpractice. The next allegation we have relates to SECC. SEC is a private company, its majority shareholder is the council itself, and according to the number of councillors that follow itself, makes a loss. But despite its loss-making status, the firm has paid the highest salary of any public official this year. It's also made significant payouts to councillors who have been on the board of the firm for less than 12 months. So again, we have Councillor Redden coming up, who was able to charge over £10,000 for his leadership services to what was a loss-making firm. The next allegation we have relates to Margaret Giaconelli and her treatment over the Commonwealth Games. Margaret, which was evicted from Roanbuck House in 2011, where it was compulsory purchased. Now, despite the fact Mrs. Giaconelli's home was valued over £98,000, the council pleaded her that she had to accept only a £30,000 payout by way of compensation. But even years later, she hasn't received any compensation at all, was in fact forcibly evicted from her house. Now, the campaign has been told by others in similar position to Mrs. Giaconelli that they've not been able to come forward to claim compensation because of reprisals from the East End councils. Now again, we're being clear, this isn't something that we can 100% verify, but it's something that we believe should be investigated as part of a wider culture into the council. We have more allegations along those lines. The next allegation we have relates to George Square. I'm sure most people have heard of that. It was covered quite extensively by the Herald. And the affair itself led to a police investigation and other legal action against the council. And again, I think what the major case of mispractice there is the fact that this process cost Glasgow taxpayers almost £100,000. And again, when we have so many other allegations around the council, we believe it warrants additional attention. In the past few days, we've had two officials who have also been suspended following financial irregularities, and we also want to highlight the profiles of two councillors, specifically George Redmond and Sohan Singh, who we believe merit much closer scrutiny because of their various business deals and their various connections and possible allegations of malpractice.
We mentioned Margaret in the reports is also here with us today. I don't know if you'd like to say anything at all, Margaret.
Gone to Strasbourg and we're just waiting word back, but there is a lot of people in the area still fighting for trying to get justice under compulsory purchase. But I back these ways to come and do all the corruption that's going on.
Just to summarise here, if you take any one of these allegations on its own, some of them may be illegal, some of them are misconduct, some of them are just a bit sleazy. But it's when you look at the whole picture. We've been very clear that every single allegation we make here has happened after Labour were re-elected. This isn't previous stuff, this is stuff since Labour have been re-elected. Now, we didn't initially set out to try and besmirch anyone or attack the council in any way. Our campaign arose during the last election, and we were involved trying to get promises from councillors, prospective councillors, on what they would do if they were elected. We didn't know who was going to win the last election. We call our campaign the 100 Promises campaign because Labour were re-elected, and we felt we should continue the project of holding the council to account based on their often excellent manifesto. There's a number of promises in that 100 Promises which are absolutely amazing, and combined heat and power was very much one of our core issues that we wanted to see dealt with. As you know, around about 2,000 people will die in Scotland this winter as a result of the cold. A greater than population share will be in Glasgow. So this idea of having warmer homes, greener homes, great idea. And so it was when the payout to Ronnie Size was not accurately dealt with by the council, and they weren't asked to pay the money back. The two councils involved were told that they just need to go on training, and essentially the council slung a deethie at the report from Oscar. That piqued our interest, and obviously we started investigating it, which is where we found that there are these commercial relationships between all the key protagonists in that story. And during that process, we heard about what was happening with Comedy. We were very keen on that being a gasification plant for combined heat and power. And when it became a private incinerator, we felt at that point the council's promises were being derailed by malfeasance in public office. And that was when we began this process of compiling this dossier. Now, I appreciate there'll be questions, so if you don't mind, I'd like to take any questions. One at the back, sir.
Are you guys linked to any political parties?
I formerly was in the SSP, I'm in the SNP.
I'm not currently.
What I will say is our campaign takes in people from every political party and no political party. You know, we've got people who are not interested in party politics, we've got people who are conservatives, we've got people who are members of the Communist Party, we've got all sorts. But this is about the council living up to its manifesto. This isn't party political. Any other questions?
I think one of the key themes that comes through this manifesto is actually the stuff around housing. You've got Margaret Giaconelli there, thrown out of her home with no compensation whatsoever. You've got several councillors here making enormous profits out of hiring out substandard accommodation, making profits out of right to buy houses that should have been for ordinary people. And then at the same time, you've got 3 pages here documenting that the council is systematically telling homeless people that there's no accommodation available. Of course there's accommodation available. You can go to the Marriott, you can go to the Hilton, there's accommodation available. It's legal, a legal duty of the council to accommodate everyone that's homeless, and it's absolutely outrageous that they're getting away with making money out of these private lets when people are sleeping on the streets and being handed sleeping bags.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, it's clear that as a result of changes that the Scottish Government brought in, all councils have a duty to house anyone who's found homeless, unintentional, and basically that 23.8%, nearly a quarter of people who present as homeless and whose cases, according to Scottish law, should see them given accommodation of some description, are being turned onto the street. And there is no overall absence in social housing in Glasgow. If the council wanted to address that problem, it's a question of money, and they're clearly not providing the resources in a way that is damaging vulnerable people's lives. First, Hands up, and then
Well, I brought here a person who has been made homeless, and this is the irony that the council and the landlords, private landlords, are kind of collaborating in making people homeless. The council blames people that they are renting houses at a very high rent, but it is the council, the landlords have done that because they know that the council is going to pay them. The council must introduce a cap on the rents. That there should be a cap on how much the maximum rent should be, and the landlord should not be able to charge that rent. This lady has been made homeless because of a state agent, and because the council does not say that there are no houses. But if there are no houses, then how do we see that there are so many to-let signs everywhere in Glasgow? Every building you go, there is to-let signs. So I think this is, again, I would say similar to what you have just said, that this is outrageous and something has to be done.
I mean, I think it's clear that this is a question of priorities. If the council are not meeting their statutory duties and other councils are, that's a question of the council deciding it doesn't want to meet the statutory obligations. And that should be slapped down by the Scottish Government, and it's very clear.
My name is Austin Sheridan. I'm the SNP councillor for the Bailison ward. The reason that I came along here today is because every councillor mentioned in this report was from the East End of Glasgow. Every councillor here is from the East End, and a lot of it's focused in the East End of the city. So I think it's extremely important that I came along here. And I followed the campaign and stuff through it anyway, but this is the something that I've came to. And in terms of the watertight allegations and areas around the possibility of criminal activity, how helpful have Glasgow City Council been in investigating these activities into councillors and other organisations you've worked with? And how do you feel that, for myself as an opposition councillor, what things do you think that what steps do you feel that I should take in order to help expose things? Because honestly, I've got the administration to account, but at every turn there's blockades put in place by the administration, and I'm always happy to hear suggestions on how you feel that we can be more effective as an opposition group in the council as well.
Well, that's a very good question. In terms of how the council have responded, well, long before we compiled the dossier, and some of the people in this room were present at the time, we asked the council to come to a public meeting, basically to address some of our concerns, and they ignored our very polite requests for attendance, didn't, and were very obstructive. So that was unhelpful, and certainly didn't give us a steer either way. It showed that they weren't taking the allegations seriously. In terms of what we want to see happen, I think it would be very positive if there was a public inquiry to clear the air. Because, like I say, we have 12 allegations there, more or less, and they're all subsequent to Labour's re-election. So we know what happened before Labour were re-elected, that there was obviously the scandals around Purcell and so on, and Gordon Mattson was the man to lead the change. We're still waiting on the change. So we need some kind of scrutiny from higher up, I think. I think a public inquiry is the way to go.
The whole reason why I've came today is because of the show hand sign story, situation being councillors buying houses for £1. Look at this guy here, homeless case, no, I mean, needless to say, I pay more than £1 in rent, do you know what I mean? I'm a council tenant myself, and to find out that councillors are buying houses for £1, I'm appalled.
Yes, the sale of at that point Glasgow City Council to Sing happened. I think it was sold to him on the basis that he would renovate the homes. Yeah. He never got around to doing that. I believe they're all in Hag Hill.
Even on the bigger picture, you know what I mean? How many tenants in Glasgow are getting offered houses for £1? None.
Well,
that sounds like jobs for the boys, you know what I mean? It's for the kids here.
Well, there's certainly a case to be made there. But in terms of in terms of the recent stuff, one of the things that's come up is Sirhan Singh was an unregistered landlord. He didn't register his properties, which is, it's more than infradig. It's against the rules. It's against the law, and he's come under scrutiny from a lot of different angles recently. And I think his affairs are very opaque. He is one of the councillors we mentioned that really does need some much more thorough scrutiny. Is there any other questions?
Just to reply to the colleague for the SNP, I'm an SNP. A public inquiry ought to take place, right? And the issue of ignoring statutory obligations, right, is irrelevant because the opposition at the moment, the SNP, are doing zilch. There hasn't been a challenge to any of our issues put forward to Mr Dorman, other members of the council. They just won't take up the fight. You need to ask why. The reason that they're not complying with the statutory obligations to re-household is because they don't need it. Because the SNP are still a wee bit sad they never won the city chambers and still a wee bit unable to confront the serious issues. We know for a fact that the Councillor George Redmond has 31 houses. 31 houses, right? He lets them out to relatives, claims house and benefit, which is illegal. We've wrote to the Director of Finance, Lynn Brown. She's chose to ignore it. That's why there's no pressure coming through the loyal opposition.
If I could just reply back to that just very briefly, in terms of the Gira stuff, I personally, at full council, asked questions on that, so I challenged George Redmond on those specific issues at full council, including the nature of the payout and also around this excuse that the difference between as board members. I challenge that at full council. But the main reason that I'm here though, it is to look at suggestions and I'm open to suggestions and ideas on the way that the opposition group and the council can take things forward. And I think that's a constructive approach to opposition. It's better to come here.
We've had these problems before. Councillor McAllister has guaranteed us questions will be raised. Is that correct, Margaret? He's ignored it. Right, okay. And there's major issues. And I want to put again on record. Councillor George Redmond has 31 houses. He owns 31 houses. He's declared 4. He lets the houses to his relatives, claims house and benefit, right? Which is illegal. And despite us writing to Lynn Brown, who is very friendly, close to the Labour Party, she's chosen to ignore it. We write to George Black, another person who's very close to the Labour Party, and the reason they ignore it is because they can and because the opposition are ineffective.
Right, rather than have a discussion, if we take questions. On that point about George Redmond, I think it is very clear he is a wealthy man, and his wealth was preceded by being elected to council, and there's nothing illegal about that, but as we say in the report, it's not at the behest of his constituents, so this is something that he has privately done. Any other questions?
George Redmond resigns in 2 years' time and is discussing with Ronnie Syed his payoff for the council, which is in the area of £500,000 because he's been there for 20 years. George Redmond is talking to a guy who stole 600,000 for the council, right, to get him their money when he leaves. Ronnie Syed is actually negotiating with the council for his payoff. Nobody knows that, the SNP know that, but they're not prepared to take it up. This is not attacking the SNP, because I'm an SNP member. That's all. Sorry.
In terms of that, we're not making those allegations in this report, we're only making what we know or what we've been told. Is there any other questions, perhaps not on George Redmond, because I think he's featured quite a lot today?
Why is this why not a year ago?
That's a good question. As I said earlier, our campaign was focused during the election on extracting promises from prospective councillors. So I'll give you an example of that. In Maryhill, the Maryhill Locks development, our campaign was able to get Councillor Razak, who was re-elected, Bailey Razak now, to agree to up the number of socially rented homes at that development to over 50%. So that was a great commitment from Councillor Razak, and he went on to be re-elected. After the election, when it became clear Labour had won, we thought, okay, our job of accountability doesn't end with the end of the election. They have this manifesto, many of the promises are very good, and our focus, as I said, was on things like combined heat and power, which we saw as progressive and you know, something that we could rally people around that would make a real difference. So we decided to focus on those areas of Labour's manifesto, and that's why we call that campaign the 100 Promises campaign. In the process of holding the council to account, it became clear that one of the areas which was making it hard for us to hold the council to account was that things like the Pomedy gasification plant being sold to Viridor to become a private incinerator, going completely against published council documents, and the director of that department immediately retiring on a huge severance package. Stuff like that kept emerging, and we felt basically that the best way to hold the council to account, the best way, in effect, almost to show solidarity with the council in implementing its policies, was to see these issues come to public light and to have a public, accountable discussion about what was going on in our city. So that's why we published this report today. It's taken a long time to compile. We held a public meeting in George Redmond's constituency in April to highlight these issues. The council haven't really acted, so we feel basically we've got no alternative now other than to call for a public inquiry and to put all this out in the public domain. Hope that answers your question. Any other questions?
It's not so much a question, it's a suggestion. I would like to suggest that a copy of this is sent to every councillor, or rather hand-delivered to the city chambers to be put in the councillors' pigeonholes to be collected. And the reason I say that is that if that's done, it means every councillor is going to be opening the envelope with this in it. And any councillor that is unhappy about this can then raise it at the council meetings, because it's going to be public knowledge that these complaints have been made, and every councillor has a copy of it.
I think that's a very positive suggestion and something we probably will carry on.
But can I just add on to that? The difficulty is, with my comrade's suggestion, is protocol. You can't just take a paper, go to the council and get a meeting on it. You've got to go through the party system. You've got to go through the whips. It's almost impossible to get that even discussed in the city chamber.
Just for yourself, any councillor is allowed to submit questions to full council, and I would be happy to submit a question at the next council meeting regarding this paper.
Well, that's what we've found.
I'll be happy to raise that. I'll give the commitment to raise that as a question at full council.
Okay, fair enough. No.
Any other questions?
Thanks very much.
Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, I'd like you all please take a copy of the report, and this will not be the last you hear of this report. We will be submitting it to the council as well as to the police and to Kenny McCaskill. So this will not be the end of this story. But,